Right. Mm-mm. Alrighty, posting a few little things here, and then I'll be right with y'all. Here we go. Hey guys. See how I am. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going, guys?
pretty good. How y'all doing?
Good.
Another day.
Good. Hey, Sally. Yeah.
Hey
Hey,
guys.
Sally.
Hey,
Hi.
Sally.
Hi.
Yeah, we on another day again.
Here's another day.
I
Yep.
got I got the paint today, so that was nice.
Do we know if Vic gonna
Yeah.
make it tonight?
No, I can ask him.
Okay, I forgot to ask him out earlier. My mind's been kind of scrambled today. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
me too, me too. Been all over the place. Worked, and then I was like, I'm gonna paint too.
Oh, I know that
Yeah, I
looked
saw
great.
that. That was
That looks
good.
really good.
I missed it.
Uh,
Did you post something?
I did,
Just
but
a little short video on TikTok, wasn't it?
yeah, I put one on Facebook. Uh,
Oh, did you?
but
I
yeah,
didn't see that.
it was a smaller one. It was like 3.5 hours.
Hey guys, just said hello to everybody coming in. The print on my tablet's so small it's hard for me to read it, and if I plug it in the TV, I'll get feedback with this many group, So it's okay though. I got help. Thank goodness. I think my eyes are tired too. That may be a part of it because I've been doing so much
Oh,
research.
yeah. My son bought me a little tool today. You guys will be laughing when I tell you what it is. It's a heart collector. So basically, it taps your screen for you.
Oh
Oh, really?
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here all the time tapping the screen the entire time. So he bought me this little tool that like taps the screen for you.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
thought so
tested
too.
it yet?
Well, no, right now it's going to be. I can't talk. It has like I have to be quiet
Oh,
for it to do it. So it'll be off and on, but it's funny.
I tried to wear my dogs out and it didn't happen. I don't know if you can hear them. I'm going to have to pause.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I have
hear
to.
them back there.
I
They're
have.
having fun.
They are
Yeah.
having fun.
I have to go get my dog. She is barking at something. I'll be back.
Okay, we having a dog party today. That's funny. I just took mine out and she was being stubborn. It must be something going on there. Everybody's being crazy today with the dogs.
I was gone the entire day and I just got home like an hour ago and I ate dinner and I always try to run them before we start, to try to wear them out. I always, play with them, but it didn't work.
Oh, I know. It doesn't sometimes, does it?
No, it's
Thank you
okay.
guys for all the tapping, the likes, and all the gift stuff. That was really nice. I'm kind of giving it a minute because some people come in about 5 after, so I give them a few minutes. I hate to start and then everybody not even be here yet. We got a lot of people coming back every night. That's great. Doing pretty good, Eric. Thanks for asking. You doing okay? Eileen, can you and Sally hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
It gets so quiet it's hard for me to tell if I'm even talking.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you too. I'm just trying to figure this thing out that I'm using, but it kind of stops me from it stops me from commenting. It stops me from doing anything. So I have to be careful not to get kicked off here.
Yeah,
We'll see what
really.
happens.
Yeah, I think you can't do
Yeah.
over 400 or something like that at a time on those things too, or somebody said. I think it was Rose said that.
Is that right?
Uh-huh, she's got
Yeah.
one.
Oh, I'll watch it and see.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'd never heard of it before. So
I guess I'll get started here. I was going to talk about this verse that I was looking at last night because this was interesting to me because in actuality, Jesus did away with all covenant stuff. And I hadn't ever really looked at it from that angle, but I was looking up, I said, he was all about the not doing the oaths in Matthew 5, he said, swear no oath. And he even said, let's see, I'll just read it. So everybody, again, you've heard it said that by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, and shalt perform unto the Lord thy oaths. Okay? But I say to you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it's God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king, neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst make one hair white or black. But let your communication be yea, yea, and nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these comes of evil. And I'm like, wow, he's really literally saying there's no covenant and no oath. Because to have a covenant, you have to have an oath. You can't have, I looked it up, I was like, am I losing my mind, or is there really, you gotta have an oath to have a covenant? And it said that's the definition of a covenant, is to have an oath. So I was looking at this and see in Deuteronomy 29:12 it says, thou shouldest enter into covenant with the Lord thy God and into his oath. See, it even mentions the oath, which the Lord your God maketh for thee this day. And then in 13 he says, that he may establish thee today for a people unto himself, and that he may unto thee a God, and he has sworn unto the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath, but with him that stands here with us today before the Lord our God, also with him that is not here with us this day. So he's talking about future thing, I think, there. And it came to pass when he hears the words of this curse, that he blessed himself in his heart, saying, I have peace though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. And the Lord will not spare him, but then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man. All the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord shall blot out his name from under the heaven. Isn't that weird? It's like they have this big oath thing. And there's the word him in that sentence in verse 15, but with that standeth here. The word him is not in there, but they put it in there, they say, to make it sound better. But I think it means the other people standing there. Like, I don't think it was singular. But that's neither here nor there. The main thing is that Jesus was not really teaching an oath. And I find it curious because they put it in the New Testament as adjure, and I didn't even know what that meant. I had to go look it up because adjure is not a word that I hear all the time. This is where we left off last night, and that's going to be too tiny for y'all to read probably. But that's Acts 19. We were talking about how Paul created the Jesus thing and set all that up. We'll actually have it recorded in Acts 19, verse 13. And a certain wandering exorcist Jews. And when we think exorcist, we think about the movies, where they're casting out demons and stuff. But a exorcist in that sense was a person that doesn't swears that obtains an oath. It's an oath person. And they took upon them to name over those having the evil spirits the name of Lord Jesus, and saying, we adjure or force you to take an oath by the Jesus whom Paul doth preach. So they were wanting them to denounce the Lord Jesus and take an oath to the Jesus that Paul taught. And maybe this is where Paul got that part about if anybody teach another Jesus than the one we teach, let them be accursed. It's just crazy. And then it goes on and says, and the evil spirit answered him and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I am acquainted with, and ye, who are ye? So this evil spirit is saying that it knew Jesus and the Paul. The Jesus, and I'm like, that's weird that the evil spirit knew him. And I guess they're talking about exorcist also, like in the evil spirit, because they wouldn't have an evil spirit in there. I forgot about that part. And the man in whom was the evil spirit leaped on them, mastered all of them, and overpowered them, and they flew out of the house naked and wounded. I thought that was a weird statement. I don't really know why they were naked, but they were wounded. And this became known to all the residents of Ephesus, both the Jews and the Greeks, and fear fell upon them all. And the name of the Lord Jesus was extolled. Also, many of those who were now believers came, confessing and divulging their practices. Many of the believers came confessing and announcing these transactions or deals is what I got. And when you get on down, it's kind of like you can tell what they're talking about by a transaction. And a number of those who had practiced magic arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all, and counted the value of them, and found it came to 50,000 pieces of silver. Now, when I translated that verse, I got a big shock. They were not burning books, they were writing books. It says, but these capable of strange undertakings or practices co-authored the Bibles or books, the Biblios, day by day in front of the fire and in the spirit of all, and they voted on the price to obtain 5 myriad of silver. So the silver they were getting, it comes to 50,000 pieces of silver total, and that's what they were selling these for. They were writing them, they were not burning books. I always wondered about that. How did they get silver if they were burning them? But when I looked at the Greek, I know now. And this is where I did it, and you can see the word up here on the top. Hopefully you can see it. Every translator threw it in and said co-authors. They were writing, and then it said it was a fire like you were sitting by the fire for the light, or a candle light. It was some kind of light that was on fire, coming from a fire source, like an ancient lamp, or oil lamp or something. But this is when you see these things that I do, this is just where I check in every word. I'm going through and looking at the Greek, and then I'm looking to see if everything lines up with what they have. And a lot of times you'll see they'll have stuff in parentheses, or they'll have stuff in light gray, and that means it's not in the original text. They added it trying to make the sentence sound better, or that's what they say. But to me, a lot of times they're distorting what we have there. Let's see. And you can see here, like in Acts 4:12, when Peter's talking, it says, "Neither is there salvation in any other name, none other by heaven given among men, whereby you must be saved." And he's saying that in verse 10, that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, who was crucified, whom God raised from the dead, by him doth this man stand here before you whole. So he's giving credit, Peter's giving credit to the Christ one. And like I explained, Jesus said that no man should ever call him the Christ. He rebuked those that did. I'm reviewing this in case there's somebody new in here. And he denied that he was the Christ to Pontius Pilate 6 times in the text. So he made it very clear. And then we have Matthew 24:5, which we've already discussed, where he says that calling him the Christ will be the main deception in the end time. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this video now, because we've got so many people going into this Christ consciousness, New Age junk. It looks like a hodgepodge of Wicca to me. It's got astrology, and some people are even doing tarot cards I've seen. Chakra work. It reads like a Wicca 101. If you pick up a Wicca 101 book off Amazon, you see many of the same things they talk about on the lives. But he did warn that calling him the Christ would be the main deception in Matthew 24:5. It does not mean that there's going to be a bunch of mini Christs coming around. The word in that sentence is epi, and epi means to superimpose or lay upon. It's like your epidermis is your outer layer, your skin, when you're studying science in high school and stuff. Well, that's the top layer. It means you're going to lay on the top of his name the word Christ, and that's going to be the deception. Ain't going to be a bunch of mini Christs running around. Let's see. Then we have Paul doing the same thing Peter was doing in Philippians 2:11, and every tongue may confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So they have both of them doing the same stuff, going out with the name that he had just told the apostles no man should ever call him that. Uh-oh. Ooh. I don't know what happened there. Okay, that was just more of the same of my going through. And immediately when I saw all this, my mind went to 1 John 2:22, because we hear that all the time, that who is the liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is the Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. Well, it's not translated right. They dropped a major word, an important word, in between the word Jesus and Christ, and it's the word not. It looks like an onk in Greek. It looks like O-U-K if you're looking at. That's not what it is. Actually, I mean, you have to know Greek, but you can see it in the interlinear, and you'll see that it's blank. I don't care what manuscript. If you can find one that's got it not in there, just send it to me, because I couldn't find a single one. But the verse should have read, who is the liar but he that denieth that Jesus is not the Christ? This is the Antichrist. And Antichrist didn't mean what we thought it did either, I don't think, because anti-theos, theos is the word God, means God-like. If you were going to say the vice president of, Greece, it would be anti for the prefix, just like we have vice. It meant vice, deputy, or like. It can mean against in some instances, but it's just too many words that were not read that way. Like in Rome, in Greek, Jehovah's or Yahweh was the main temple god on the main hill, and the his son was called Antiochus. It's like he had the same name, but he had anti in front. He's like the vice, the second one in command, the deputy. And if you look it up, you'll actually see in the dictionary deputy, vice, and all that. You'll see all those definitions, but they just ignore it. Oh, let's see. But I checked. This is a famous interlineary. This is Green, J. Green's. I mean, everybody uses it that studies Greek, and it's in there. And I'm like, how could this be missed? It's like it wasn't an accident. I checked. There's the word right there. You can see it. Let me see if I can blow it up a hair so you can see what I'm talking about. That's the word for not. And that icy with a line over it is Jesus and Christ. It's like they put a line. See the XC, that's Christ, and IC with a line over it is Jesus. It says Jesus is not the Christ. Okay, I checked the Latin, and the Latin has non. Jesus non este Christus. And that means Jesus is not the Christ. Same thing. Now, if the two negatives had fallen together, it'd be just like English where the two negatives would cancel each other out, but they do not fall together. So that a lot of people have come back and said, "Oh, but it's got two negatives, and they should have canceled." No, they would have to be back to back, just like. And see, even in this, can y'all see that? I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's an Old Knox translation. See that right there? Jesus is not the Christ. They've even put it in the Knox Bible, the Old Knox Bible. They know. I mean, that's the Latin from the Latin Bible, but I mean, they know it should have read a not in between. I checked all these. See all those? That's what I was telling you about. It looks kind of like an O-U-K when you're looking for it. And it can be O-U like that one right there about a little over halfway down. But most of the time they write it O-U-K. And it's right smack in between the word Jesus and Christ. Let's see. Now, the next thing is another big thing we're going to talk about. And let's see, I got to get that down smaller again. Sorry, I'm not very good with this media thing. The TikTok, it's real hard to operate the visuals because I can't just pull them up on a screen for y'all. I wish I could. I'm having to take my tablet and shoot a picture of my computer monitor to get these for y'all. How do we know that Jesus was not born of a woman but was divine in nature and from heaven? This is a big thing that I think a lot of people miss. About close to 40 times, Jesus tells us he was sent. And it's like, I kept noticing, I'm like, sent. He never once said he was born. Then when he's talking to the disciples, he tells them that of those born of women, none is greater than John the Baptist. And the least in heaven will be greater than John the Baptist. And I thought, that's wild, because that would make Jesus not be as high a status as even John the Baptist. I said, that makes no sense, That couldn't be, because when I first started saying, I thought that he was Mary's son, the real one. But then I didn't realize there was two. It's like, once you realize there's two, you'll see, like in John, you've got a monogene, an only begotten. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And the word for that is monogene. Well, mono means one. And gene is like your genetic gene. It's like whatever makes your genetic component in Greek. So it's like he had to come from a single gene. And monogene is a unique, one-of-a-kind, has no brothers and sisters, and would be just like from one parent instead of two. Okay, now in the other Gospels, we have a firstborn. A firstborn is totally different. A firstborn has both parents and has brothers and sisters. So when Jesus was telling us this stuff, like, that's why I think John is an important book. It's like they're trying to do away with it, but I think it tells us so much of the truth of the spiritual nature of Jesus versus the, like, where he was, what he was doing. It tells us a different side of him from the other gospels. I don't think it's particularly, like, wrong. I think it was the most correct of all of them to me, and the most spiritual of all of them. It's like the others are kind of like a recorded history of what happened, but John tells you who he was. That he was the Father, that I and the Father are one, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. You get a more picture of his spiritual meaning. And when you go to the manuscripts, when you say only begotten Son, it doesn't say only begotten Son, it says only begotten Theos in a lot of the Koine Greek. So that means that John literally called him a God in that text. Now we read John 16:28. I came forth from the Father and have come to the world. I leave the world and go unto the Father. He's just talking about coming and going, just like we talk about coming and going. There's nothing about being born in there. There's no, John 16:29, and his disciples even got it. They were like, oh, now you're speaking plainly and not using figurative speech. They understood what he said because he was just point blank saying, I came down, I was here, I'm going to leave, I'm going back to the other world to the Father. And he gave us a clue that we can kind of know the difference in the two Jesuses. It's like, he that cometh from above is above all. He that is of the earth is earthly and speaks of the earth. He that cometh from heaven is above all. So he made a delineation. And he makes a delineation that we will receive the wrong one when he says, I come in my Father's name. When another comes in his own name, you'll receive him. So he was kind of giving us some heads up, But I bet he's looking down here going, they got all these textbooks. They know how to read the Greek. Why don't they got it? Why don't they understand what I'm saying? I can't even imagine. Let's see. I already quoted that one without even reading off the card. Okay, John 17:8 is important too. For the words which you gave to me, I have given to them, and they received, and truly knew that I came from beside you, and they believed that you sent me. It's like he plainly says what's going on. Now we have other verses, and this is why the two are in John also. You got to really be looking, because we have other verses where he's literally saying he is God. And even that atheist Bart Earhart that does all the videos on YouTube, he'll admit that too. He's like, he said, you can't get through John without admitting that he's a God. He said, if you do, then you didn't read it. Let's see. Okay, and he said in verse 25 of John 17, Righteous Father, indeed, the world did not know you, but I knew you, and these have known that you sent me. And I made known to them your name, and will make known that the love at which you loved me may be in them, and I in them. So he's given some pretty strong words, It's like when he says, I came from above 40 times, it's pretty simple. Let's see. This was interesting too. I went looking in the other books to see what they had. I'm going to put this here where you can see maybe better. On Luke 2:43. And we have in English, and when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. Okay, when I looked at that sentence, I'm like, something's wrong there when I started looking at it. Well, one thing I noticed, the one for boy is specifically a slave or servant. It's not really a child, it's a servant. And I'm like, why are they calling him a servant? Then I looked and it said that he did not know Joseph and his mother. I'm like, why would he not know his mother? And his father. I think that there's a lot more to this story than what we have. Trying to think what else. Yeah, because it's like a definite. It's the same word that he did not know Joseph and the mother, his mother. I'm like, why did they leave that off? Why did they take that out? I mean, they didn't even put the not in there, I don't think. Knew not of it is what they put, but of it is not even in the sentence in Greek. It's like they completely, when you go look at the numbers and make sure there's actual a number behind the English, because a lot of times they just add something in there. And in this sentence, they have added of it at the end. His mother knew not of it, instead of he did not know Joseph and his mother. And that's what it says. He didn't know them. And that's where I just double checked. I went and double checked it. Because I'll do that. I'll throw it in the translator. And all kinds of stuff. Because even when I threw it into Bing Translate, it says not knowing Joseph and his mother. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there. And we'll kind of go see if anybody's got any questions on all this stuff we've covered so far. Because this is a lot to take in. This is pretty intense. This is a 6-hour video I'm going over with y'all. If you want to see the original video, you can go to the Scriptural Truth on YouTube, and it's 6 hours long, so take your time, pop your popcorn, watch an hour a night, or something like a mini-series. Don't try to take it all in at one time, because it's a lot of material. But I just thought people might want to ask questions on this, because it's pretty intense what I found. That's why I chose this one to talk about. Get y'all back to a black screen so y'all can see your writing. I know how that is. Yeah, that's better. I'll give you room to see your stuff. Would anybody like to come up and talk? Hey, Vic, how's it going?
Hey,
I was
everybody,
hoping
how
you'd make
was
it
your
tonight.
day? Well,
Pretty good.
Friday night is good. Friday night is date night for me, and so we just got back from a lovely meal and all that groovy stuff too. All that
Oh,
romance.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, we're like a couple of teenagers. We just like to keep. You gotta throw a log on the fire every once in a while, you know.
That's the truth.
Every yeah,
Oh, shit.
and but we had a good time. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. I'm doing pretty good
Good.
today.
Did you give us a rundown on the topic tonight? I probably missed it.
Yeah, you missed it. I just stopped and was started to invite people up. Uh-oh, shoot.
Okay,
I hit my roller thing.
great.
I'm sorry. Hey,
That's
Shannon.
Just
fine.
going through the Matthew 24 video in little segments so people can get each little thing. This is probably good to, reanalyze that whole video even more so, with more words, more detail.
Well, I have to say that I'm going to say this, and I've listened to parts of almost all your videos, artist, but that Matthew 24, that that that's just a that 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 video alone has changed me more than anything, and how I view, my walk with Jesus Barabba. I love that. Jesus Barabba. There's such a beautiful ring to that, you know? But I mean that's so I'm probably gonna watch that one twice. I know it's 6.5 hours long, and it makes it sound like I don't have a life, but honestly,
It don't seem that long though when you're actually like studying it and
no.
all. It's like maybe it's because I was real interested to see what else I would find after I found that one verse. Something
Well,
different there.
I really like how you go into tiny little micro topics as you're going through it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Just like the 5G thing
Yeah.
that you have a wonderful way of making it applicable to today's life in that sense. But no,
There's
it's
a
Yeah,
video
you guys will
stuff that I've
see.
never seen before.
You guys will see as I go along. What I did, I took it and put it in ancient Greek, and then put it in modern Greek, and you can see a lot of what we're going through today when you put it modern, because they hadn't got very far in to see all that stuff yet. You know.
well, I never realized what a difference there was. Um, you know, I had a couple semesters of Greek back in, I guess you would call it seminary or Bible college. I don't know. I call it a joke now, but we looked at the old Greek and mainly. So you can learn a lot when you apply both. Am I correct?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah, I do too.
And, I don't 100% trust Wiki all the time, because they do have some stuff on there that kind of waffles. But on their language thing, on their Greek, they do a good job because they have like the ancient and the modern, and they also have like all the resources they use to get that from. So you can just go punch in and pull it up, like pull up
Right.
and see where they got it. Like go look at the old lexicons, go look at the old dictionaries. It's pretty cool. I'll show them what an egghead I am, a geek. Yeah, for sure, Shannon. If you want to come up, come on up. Oh, you got kicked, Sally? I'm sorry.
Um, Pray for Us is on the panel. I don't know if you have questions. I
Oh, I
haven't
didn't.
seen him
He's
here
got such a
before.
dark icon. I didn't even see him down there on the
Yeah, he's
bottom.
at the bottom.
Hey, pray for us. How you doing?
Hey, how are you? I'm
Pretty
good.
good.
Well, I like your name there. Pray for us.
Oh, thank you.
That's a that's we
Have
all
have
need
you
that.
have you been following along, or is this your first time, or you don't really know what we're talking about, or do you kind of know, or
Oh, I'm brand new here. I've never been here to this live. I had
okay?
stopped because there was a discussion it looked like going on about the First John chapter 2, and then I didn't really catch much of it. I think I came in towards the end, and I was just curious like what that talk was about. And then I was invited up.
Yeah,
We were.
we
Go ahead. Go
go.
ahead,
No,
Nathan. You
no, no,
explain.
no, 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 no. You're the host. This is fine. Go ahead.
No, it doesn't matter.
But I also, if you've already gone through it and you don't want to do it again, I totally understand. Don't
No,
worry.
no. This is what the discussion part is for. We just want to explain whatever it is that you're asking about. But she's going to be able to explain it a little better because she just went over it. So I'll let her explain it.
Yeah, it's the one that says, "Who is the liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ?" This is the Antichrist. Well, actually, when I looked at it in the Greek, I found they dropped the word "not" and just completely left it out. And I was like, okay. And it falls right in between Jesus and Christ. It doesn't fall by the other negative. Now, if it fell by the other negative, just like English, it would have canceled out and made it into a non-negative. But because when you put two negating particles together, they cancel and become obsolete or whatever. It's kind of a weird way to do it, but that's the way they did it in Greek. And so it should have read, "For who is the liar but he that denieth that Jesus is not the Christ? This is the Antichrist." And I explained to him that anti did not mean what we think, because in ancient Greek, when you said anti-theos, which is the word for God, it meant godlike. Well, anti in Greek, like if you were going to say the vice president of Greece, the first part of the word is anti, because it can mean vice, deputy, or it can also mean like. And then, like when they say Vigarius Christi in the Latin, it's the same thing as Antichrist. It didn't particularly mean against, and that shocked me too, because I didn't expect to find that when I was looking in the dictionaries. I was like, what? And then when I looked at all the words like that had anti in front of them, I was like, and they were not negatives. I was like, oh man, there's a problem here. Especially when I got to anti-theos, I knew there was some kind of big problem. Does that make it? See,
Also, that's not the
What
only
would
place where they drop the negating particle, or they leave out not, or the de, or there's a lot of places that they do it, and
yeah,
she
they've
was
left
showing
them
that
out
as
in
well.
in a bunch of different places.
But we
Well,
were
I was going to
focusing on
see if
that
you
one
understood what I
verse.
was saying, or do I? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
um I okay, what would uh, not really. I'm wondering what would be the I guess what would be the conclusion then if that were the case? I don't
So that's what we talk about here on the panel. Um, it's that the the well, there's a lot of other verses to go along with this, but I can sum it up a little bit if you want me to.
sure.
But essentially, the more and more we've researched and looked at it, it appears that there is, and where we found this was at the trial when the two were being presented before Pontius Pilate. There's in the original Greek manuscripts and the oldest ones you can look at, they all are saying that there's Jesus, who they call the Christ, and Jesus Bar Abba, or well, they add the S later, but Bar Abba in Aramaic means son of the Father. So there's two Jesuses being presented before him, and then once Jesus became this sacred name and all this, and the churches did all that, then they changed the text, and they said, well, we're going to take the Jesus part out in front of Bar Abba because it's confusing to people, because they were trying to push their Christ figure. This is a lot if you don't know the difference between the Father and Yahweh also, so I don't know where you're at in your understanding, but we're talking about these two things with the two Jesuses now, but I don't know if you know about Yahweh and the Father and the differences, or if you've studied that before or ever heard that before.
No, yeah, that'd be a completely different theology than I'm used to. So I'm interested to hear what you guys believe.
So,
I think we'd probably be on pretty different spectrums.
it's okay. It's okay. And because I was too, and this kind of scared me years ago because I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to um, believe really because I didn't have enough evidence or proof. I had to study for a lot of years and then say, okay, there's a profound contrast between what Jesus is portraying and saying that his Father is like, and his actions and the works that he did bear witness of the Father. Remember, he told us that. So we're having a strong contrast between his works and his teachings and the things that he is saying, where he's comparing and contrasting these things that the Jewish folk know and things from Yahweh in the Old Testament. Whereas they're trying, the Christian church and most Christians have tried to jumble this together and say, oh, Jesus was Yahweh and that's the God in the Old Testament. But we would say otherwise because he's saying everything the opposite of what Yahweh was saying throughout the Old Testament. I mean, pretty much exact opposite. And we can give examples for that too if you want.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you believe that like the Old Testament God is like different from like a New Testament God? Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
Well, we believe that Jesus came to reveal the Father, which he told us that no man had ever heard his voice or seen his shape at any time before that, and all that came before him were nothing but thieves and liars. So Jesus for us is that final authority figure. So whatever he says that's the final authority, and all that came before him, if they were thieves and robbers, then I'm not going to put much weight in all of that. Plus, well, there's other things I could say, but I don't want to just keep going on and then I'm losing you. Because this is a lot. This is a lot. Like, this isn't something you're gonna. If you're just hearing this for the first time, you're
Yeah,
gonna.
this is brand new for me. Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna
It's
be
like,
a
like
lot to
what
listen
did
No,
to.
yeah,
what did they
I
just
wanna.
say? It's like
This took us years and years of studying to get to where we're at. It's not like this was something we figured out in 15 or 30 minutes. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 years of. Me and the host used to be in Hebrew roots or Torah observance. Do you know what that is?
No. Like you
So,
followed Old Testament like Levitical law
like
and
you yeah, you would say that you believe Jesus, but you thought he was leading you back to the Old Testament law, so you would follow Sabbath and you would observe Passover and you'd try to keep all the Torah and things like that. Have you heard of that
would it
before?
would it follow then that like Paul's writings were not accurate and like a distortion of the truth or
Well,
something? Is that where it would lead?
Paul, well, like we were saying that we think that there's two Jesuses that were presented, one the Son of the Father, and the other Jesus, who they called the Christ. And we think that Paul pushed the Christ because he says Christ, 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 Christ throughout all his books, whereas you really don't find that word very much in the older manuscripts in the Gospels. It's only like a small handful of times, and they inserted it a lot more later because of where the church was going and what they believed, and a lot of the early Christians, I think, um, just followed along with all of that. But gosh, this is so hard
Would any
to
of
know where to start
no, it's okay.
because
I
I don't
guess
want to
I'll just
lose
ask
you, and I
questions
don't
as they
want you.
pop up in my head.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering then, so is there anything in any of the Gospels that would lead you to that, like prior to Paul's writings?
yeah. Jesus told us. He said, "I come in my Father's name, and when another comes in his own name, you'll receive him." he was kind of warning, that we were going to take up with the wrong one. You know, I'm
Mm.
trying to think of another instance. Like when he's talking to the Jews in John, he says, um, you know, your father's of the devil, and he was a unaliver and a liar from the Genesis, from the beginning. If you were reading that in Greek, it literally says it's like Genesis. It's like Genesis 1, you know. And people kind of miss that because we're not reading in the same languages.
Mm.
And he calls Moses an accuser, and the word in Greek is a categoris, and categoris specifically meant a Satan back then. I'm trying to think what else. There's a ton of stuff. It's like he says, like, what father would give you a serpent when you ask for a fish? And it's like that Yahweh did that in the wilderness. And I think we've kind of been deceived in a
Yeah, he,
bit.
he sent out fiery serpents to unalive
Mm-hmm.
many of them. And he's telling us what kind of loving father is going to do that. There's other examples as well where
And
he's comparing and contrasting the Old Testament law, where he's saying, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, forgive your neighbor, not an eye for an eye, but forgive one another, and 70 times 7, all that, you've heard that. But Yahweh's the one that was telling them an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's what they knew from
I,
Torah.
I think an understanding of the word parable helps too, because parable came from the word parabolo, and it means to compare. It means to lay side by side two things and look at them. And see, we've been taught in churches and stuff that it's like this mystery, you're going to find this hidden meaning or something like that. But it literally is like we get the same word for parallel bars from it. It's like it means lay it down there side by side and look at it. So every time he says, I tell you a parable, he's saying, compare this, compare this. And I think that kind of went amiss. And they made some other little tweaky changes. They made a bunch of tweaky changes to try to make a narrative. But I think if you take his words and you lay them against the Old Testament, you're going to see, like he said, swear no oath. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. It's like Yahweh's like, swear an oath to me. That's just right up front. That's a covenant. A covenant is an oath. You can't have a covenant without an oath. And see, everybody's going by the prophecies for the Messiah thing, and it's like there's supposed to be a new covenant, another oath. And Jesus saying, don't swear any oaths. And people don't think about what it's like. They don't pay attention. It's like they read right over it because we've got so many writings from Paul. But we can see in Acts 17, it's like they had the Jewish exorcist out there, and an exorcist extracts an oath from somebody. That's what they do. And they're having them denounce Lord Jesus and swear an oath to the Jesus that Paul taught. Then you've got Paul saying, if anybody teaches a different Jesus than the one we do, let them be accursed. That's not something that would have been from Father or from Jesus. He wouldn't have taught people to go out and curse people. Paul blinds a man in Acts. It's like Jesus said heal the blind. He didn't say go blind somebody. I mean, we got a lot of problems.
So would you reject the canon of Scripture as a conclusion to that line of thought?
You're saying like it's the inerrant word of God, like the church teaches?
Yeah, I guess you couldn't be sure of the books in the Bible being correct if you're questioning Paul's writings being a part of the canon of Scripture.
We're not saying that it's not some sort of historical accuracy of what was going on, and those folks were there and they were written. We're not denying like that part of it, but as far as saying that that the KJV or whatever, certain people say, oh, this is the infallible word of God, the inerrant word of God. I mean, that's a massive thing to say, and then it's turning people into worshiping a book instead of what Jesus was actually saying.
Oh, I see.
Well, you know what? You know where in first book of John it says the light was in the world, and the world received it not. Four times he mentions the world. Then you get down to the verse and it says, And he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Well, that's a reflexive. That's a reflexive pronoun in Greek. And what they did was turn it into a his own, and it should have been the same. And you have a verse right up from that that's the same thing, and they translate it correctly. But when they got down there, he didn't come to one nation for 1% of the people. He came for the entire world. 4 times he mentions the world. He never mentioned one nation. But they did little tweaky stuff to the Greek text to make you feel that way or to think that way. Because everybody quotes that verse saying, it came just for the Jews. Even though the world is mentioned 4 times. It's just, I think it takes just.
Yeah, that's just John's 3:16. It says a lot of it right there. I mean, that says
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, for God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him has eternal life. It wasn't like that the 1% that he came, but that's why you can see the 2 Jesuses, because then you've got the other one saying he came only for the house of Israel. It's like you've got 2 in there. You've got one born, you've got one sent. About almost
Right.
40 times Jesus tells us he was sent, not born. And a monogene
right. Go ahead. Yeah, only begotten means monogene or monogenetic, meaning from one gene, not born of a woman.
Right. And a firstborn means born of a woman with 2 parents and has brothers and sisters. So you've got 2 separate Jesuses in there. You've got a Jesus that can be touched after the resurrection, and they recognize. You've got a Jesus that they don't recognize, and he doesn't want anybody to touch him. I mean, you've got a lot of. If you don't have 2 Jesus, you've got a lot of inconsistencies. But I think there's 2. I know there's 2 Jesuses. Even Oregon, the historic, the early church father said that, I don't like calling him father, but that's what they call him in the textbook, so I'm sorry.
You said patriarch.
Patriarch. Yeah, that's a better
thing.
term because I don't like using that word father because he said don't call anybody father. But it's like he said that they changed the name in the Gospels, that it was Jesus Bar Abba and they changed it to just Jesus. They decided to make Jesus sacred, the sacred name. So they dropped.
Hold on. They changed it to just Bar Abba and took off the Jesus title before Barabbas.
Yeah, you can read it. If you just look in the Jewish encyclopedia under Barabbas, it's under there. You can read about what they did to the text, but they made a decision to change the text, so don't tell me it's in there. It's like, why do they do these things? Why did they pull all the names out and put initials in?
Can I ask something for clarification?
Sure.
I keep when you're speaking, you keep referencing they, as in like they changed something. Who is that in reference to? Is there like a particular group in history that you think did that, or is that like
I would assume the
It's
Catholic
multiple
Church.
groups. I mean, yeah.
Well, let's see, primarily the Catholic Church because they were the first ones that put out the Jewish. They started the Catholic Church, and basically the Catholic Church is a Kabbalah temple. And they're the ones that had the first manuscript, so I would assume it started there.
Yeah, because that's the faith I follow currently. Is I would call myself a Catholic.
I used to be Catholic. I was Catholic for many years. Yeah.
So yeah, Pat on the panel here, he also was he was born and raised in Catholicism as well.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty common to find lots of Catholics in the world. Oh, cool.
Yes, I don't bash anybody for what they believe in right now because you're where you're at right now with your belief.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's like everybody's at a different understanding for their life. It's like you may go on and study like I did and find out other things, or you might be satisfied with where you're at right now. But it's like for me, I just wanted the truth. He said, you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. I thought, what does he mean? So I started asking Father. I was like, Father, help me find the truth. So that's how I started this whole journey, is looking for truth.
I guess, okay, that would lead me to another question, I guess, is about, so because like for instance, right, like I would look towards like the Vulgate, right? Like I would trust that just simply just
The
because that would
Latin
be like,
Vulgate?
yeah.
Yeah.
And just historically, because like I would trust in like Saint Jerome, like having like just the history of that. So, but you're referencing a lot of the Greeks, so I'm curious, like,
Yeah, but even
I
even
just
in the Latin
referenced the
Vulgate,
Vulgate. I'll
yeah.
show you. Hang on that 1 John 2:22. That word "not" is in there in the Latin Vulgate. I just showed it to them. I'll pull it back up. Cause yeah, I do look at the Latin. I compare the Latin.
well, I was just wondering what your opinion on the Vulgate would be. If like, does it have any weight, or do you just reject it altogether to go back to like Greek manuscripts? That was more the point I was
We're
getting
we're
to.
we're just going back to the oldest things written down to say, okay, what's been actually said here, and what have they changed over time? Because we have the ability to do that now. We couldn't even do that 10, 15 years ago. So now it's accessible for just the common person to be able to look at all these things. If you have certain apps or you pay for certain programs where you can,
Right,
read through everything and observe the actual manuscript, see what's there.
right,
Um,
Yeah, I go
and
to that Codex Sinaiticus online, the Koine, and pull it up and check and see what they had in the actual manuscript,
hmm,
and then compare it to the interlineary to see if it's correct. And then I check every word for the etymology and what it meant in ancient Greek, and then I look at what it means in modern Greek, and then it can take me a whole day to do one verse, like to look at one verse. I
right.
mean, I really go in depth with them. I'm not a linguist. I'll be honest. I've studied 5 languages, but I'm not a linguist. That's not. I was primarily an art major, but I just like language,
Right on.
and so I'm not a scholar in that aspect. I don't consider myself a scholar. I just felt like I found some truth, and I wanted to share it with everybody. If that makes sense. I'm going to show
Yeah.
you this real quick if I can get it on the camera where you can see it. But this is the Latin Vulgate.
Hmm.
Oh, crap. It's going in my vision there. See that word N-O-N in between the word
Hmm. Non
for
est Christus.
Jesus? Yeah, and that's not. And even when you come down to see that, can you see at the bottom, Jesus is not the Christ? That's the old Knox Bible. That's one of the
Actually,
first.
I have a copy of the Knox version here in my room.
They still kind of distort the verse. It's not right in the Knox Bible, but they did acknowledge that there was the word "not" in there. They're the only Bible out of all the ones I checked that actually acknowledged the word "not" was in the sentence.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
I would
checked a
like I
bunch.
would I would lean more on the personally I go to the Douay Rheims just because it's like a word for word English version of the Latin Vulgate. The
Yeah,
Knox
that's the one
version
I
came
use a
much
lot.
later.
I
Yeah.
use that one a lot.
What
People
was what
online want
let's
me to
see, what
read
is
from King James though for some reason when I do my
yeah.
videos.
I just go to Douay Rheims for English personally.
Mm.
I just like that it's a word for word translation from the Vulgate, but I guess if you're leaning into like Greek manuscripts, then it probably won't hold as much weight in your studies.
Latin's so much easier to understand though than Greek. It's
it
like
is,
the
yeah.
Greek is a lot harder.
Yeah,
Well,
let's see.
especially
Douay Rheims
Koine Greek.
chapter. Yeah, so here, let's see. It says, "Who is a liar but he who denieth that Jesus is the Christ?" Do you think that's inaccurate then from the Douay translation compared to what
Yeah.
you're seeing?
Yeah,
Uh,
because it's in there.
yeah, it should
They
say
just they
who
didn't.
is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is not the Christ. If the two negatives would have been together, they would have canceled each other out. But they're not. They're not positioned in the right place to cancel each other.
Interesting.
See, that's what scared me when I read. It's like I was reading Matthew 24:5, and it just flew in my face. What did that say again? You know how you're kind of like you'll be reading something that just flies off the page at you. It's like Father wants you to pay attention or something. And it just like you're reading it for the first time. And I was like, and it says, "Many will come in my name, saying I'm the Christ, and they're going to deceive many." And I said, that doesn't say what we've been taught that it says. So I started digging it apart, with the Greek and all, And it doesn't. It really literally says, many will come, superimpose my name, saying that I am the Christ, and they're going to deceive many. And because the word they use for in is epi in Greek, and epi means like when you say your epidermis, you're talking about your outer layer, your skin. It's the layer that lays on top. Epi's like specifically means superimpose, but it can mean lay upon or put upon. They're going to put upon my name the word Christ, and they're going to deceive many. It doesn't mean there's a bunch of many Christs going to come. And I was like, and I don't know why. I guess it was Father, because I'm like, why I saw that, I don't know, but I did. And then I started looking at all the places Christ was using. I saw sentences from Jesus like saying that no man should ever call, he commanded no man should ever call him the Christ. And I thought, what? Why have I never noticed that before? And I started looking and looking, and then I get to where he's on the trial with Pilate, and 6 times he denies that he's the Christ. We have one positive in Mark where they say that he said, I am the Christ, but when I went and looked at the Greek, they dropped the negating particle, just like they did in 1 John 2:22, and I'm like, that was probably intentional. But then you got that, I think it all happened there in Acts. I think Luke even told us it was going to happen. Where they were telling them to denounce one and swear an oath to the one Paul taught.
Well, and they've also changed some of Jesus's words where, there's a lot of people, they'll bring up the verse that says, I didn't come to bring peace, but to bring the sword. But when you look at the older, just anything older, it says, I did not come to cast out peace, but to cast out the sword. And I think that they had to change a lot of these things because of their holy wars and everything that they were trying to push as kingdoms, and just, we got to keep people believing in this Christ figure, and the holy wars are justified, and doing all this unaliving and burning people at the stake and stuff. And there's just a lot of that going on in history.
And you got stuff like Paul saying, the servant of the church is worth their wages and all this stuff, and they deserve to get paid and all these things in his verses. And then you got Jesus saying, don't receive no money for what you received without having to pay, so don't charge other people for telling them about it. It's like, I'm paraphrasing, the verses, but you know what I mean. It's like, there's just so many places like that. It's like, you can clearly see the difference in the two teachings. It's like, it's wild. Did that help some, what I told you? I hope so. Nate and I are trying.
I'm trying my best. I just know that like where you're at is such a hard position to even try to listen to what we're saying. So we get it if you're like you're this or you're that. Like we get it all the time.
Oh, no,
So
I'm not trying to come to any judgment. I'm just listening. And I mean, I would say it goes against like what I believe.
oh yeah, it does. It does. But
But I'm not
that's
going to
why I
sit
was
here
saying
and
what I
like,
said.
I'm not trying to argue and yell and get into a big old fight, I was just
Yeah,
curious as to like,
that's what typically happens on TikTok Live.
I
So
know, I've noticed
we
that.
get
Yeah.
it. We get it.
Yeah.
Because we're not trying to deceive anybody. We're not trying to lead someone in a deceptive way, because we're just trying to present the studies and things that we've been going over for the past 5 years. Now it's gotten to the point where we're doing TikTok lives and we're trying to talk to people individually about it. And she, the host artist, has a YouTube channel called Scriptural Truth, and she has all this in several. I mean, it's probably, I don't even know, probably 100 hours worth of just her going through each little thing, each little step, every little translation, manuscripts, all the little details that you want to know if you were going to talk to us about what we're talking about now. But I think
Soon you'll get your honorary doctorate.
Oh,
I
gosh,
don't want it. I don't want it. I
we don't want none of that.
I got no use for it.
Textual criticism.
That's
No.
funny. I never even thought of that, but that's funny. Yeah, with my Mississippi twang and my poor pronunciation, I don't think that'll happen.
That's a lot of work, for sure. I mean,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I've
it's
spent the
important
last
to
10
us.
years of my
It's very
life on it
important to
full
us.
time. I research anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've been a part of her group for about 5 years or so, and I rejected a lot of these things. So I get it. I was very hesitant to even want to think or look at some of this stuff. But I would say if where you're at, and especially being Catholic, I would try to at least see all the times that Jesus is comparing and contrasting all these things from the Old Testament that they knew and correcting it with the truth. Because there is a difference in what he's saying. I know they try to tie it together and say, okay, this is all the same thing and whatever, but if you're really listening to his words and only looking at his words, there's profound contrast between him and Yahweh of the Old Testament, which is the Jewish fire desert god that they unalived all these people, and telling you, I'm glad when you dash babies against the rock, and um, bunch of other things where he's just. I don't know how much, because we used to read Torah portions and we used to be part of Torah observance, and then going through those Torah portions when you're reading the Old Testament, you're like, gosh, this is because you're studying the Hebrew. You want to know what it's really saying, and then the Hebrew makes it worse. It's like, gosh, the English version seems like a Disney version of what everything's going on, because he's starving his people so bad that they're eating their own children, and it just doesn't seem like Jesus. It doesn't seem like the Father he was talking about. And I think it's in First John where it says, there is no darkness in him, only light. Like otherwise, we would have a kingdom divided. There is no darkness in the Father. He's only good, and that's what Jesus's works and actions and everything portrayed. Now I know that there was people that will say, "Oh, well, Jesus did this, Jesus did that, whatever." That's where we have to say, okay, well, if you know Yahweh is the God of the Jews, and it's not the Father that Jesus was teaching, then you can compare and contrast, and you can see, okay, hold on, I see differences now. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely difficult to even see what we're talking about. And I really hope that I'm helping with any little words I'm saying, because I'm trying to put myself back in the mindset of where you are now, which was many years ago. So it's hard for me to think it and see it that way, because once you see something, it's hard to unsee this truth once you see it.
Hmm. I think for me it'd be challenging because I guess when I came out of atheism and I would say reverted back into Christianity, it one of the foundations for me, I guess this would like completely destroy that foundation, would be that Jesus promised a church that wouldn't be prevailed. And so if I would have to see this like theology existing from like ancient Christianity in order for like that unbroken lineage to possibly exist historically. Otherwise, for me, like I wouldn't even accept Christianity at all. Like I'd probably revert back to atheism if what you're saying is accurate.
Well, I used to be atheist myself, so I can relate a little bit. Um, I found out other things that made me want to believe in a creator, not necessarily this um, topic we're talking about, but as I studied more and I wanted to get into what Jesus was saying, if something was pulling me to Jesus and his words. Um, I'm sorry. I'm really trying to think hard about what to say to you because I don't know exactly where you're at.
If you don't, if nothing else, I can tell you this: don't walk away from Jesus, because to me, he's the real thing. It's like
Yeah, I
a
agree.
lot of people, when they start seeing the deception and they start seeing what happened, they'll walk away from it all. Like become an atheist and stuff, and it's like he's real, and It's
I
his
believe that.
words. It's
Okay,
his words that showed me this, actually.
yeah. I'm just, okay, how, actually, that's a question then. How would you reconcile that? Jesus promising his church not being prevailed, and then historically, you would have to assume that from that point forward, that this belief system in particular would have to have existed. And so, since that's not the prevailing belief, then it had to have been hidden somewhere. So,
Yeah,
what
you
lineage
might
of
want to go
people have carried
online
it?
and look at the early church history, like just Google, because there is some
Yeah,
articles about there being two different Jesuses at the very
yeah,
beginning,
there is at the very beginning,
and that they
and
chose to go one direction or the other.
right, but even the Gnostics knew who Yahweh was and his character, and they followed Jesus in a different way. I mean, a lot of them were unalived, and their texts were burned and buried. But there's people that have talked about this, and even like the what was the one church father you talked? I can't remember his name. You said it earlier. Artist,
I'm trying to think. What was the question again?
Oregon, or what's the
Oh
guy's
yeah,
name?
Oh,
Oregon.
origin. Yeah.
Yeah, Origin. Yeah, I got see my pronunciations are terrible, but he wrote about the change of the name. That they did change the name from um, Jesus Barabbas to Barabbas. That like they dropped stuff, so they made changes. Even in your Catholic Bibles, a lot of times you'll have a footnote at the bottom. And I don't know about the new ones, but the old ones will have a footnote at the bottom. Change for Catholic tradition. It's like it'll say they made a change. And I'll tell you something to really look at. Look at St. Peter's. Just in your mind, think about what's happening inside of that church.
Hmm.
Because you have an altar to Peter, and it's a Kabbalah altar. It's a four-horn altar. It's exactly the same as the one on the front of the Zohar book. When you look at the old Zohar, you have his bones underneath it. You have his statue, and they dress the statue up. They put a diadem on Peter's head. They've venerated that statue so much they've worn the toes off of it. Then at the front of the church, you have his chair, Peter's chair, elevated to a position of authority. Out front, you've got Peter and Paul, two big statues. It's like, and Jesus just kind of takes a side note. It's weird. It's really weird when you think about it. It's like the entire altar and everything is centered around Peter, not around Jesus. And then you've got that new modern church they did. Have you seen that one? That's next to it? That looks like a
No.
serpent. Go look at that thing. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
scary.
I've seen the pictures.
That thing is scary looking to me. And they got Jesus looks like he's rising up out of some kind of atomic bomb ashes or something. And he looks kind of like a lizard man. He don't even look like a real human. I'm like, why did they? That's
Yeah,
just
I think a lot of modernism has unfortunately uglied some of the more traditional looking, beautiful art that you used to see. And
well, yeah, I'm an artist and I studied art history, and my dream was to go to Rome.
mm,
And I used to try to copy Michelangelo's sketches and stuff, his paintings and stuff, and paint them and everything because I love doing people and stuff, and I wanted to be just like them. But now it's like that I see all this, I'm like, it's so mind devastating. I could never look at it the same now, you
yeah.
know.
Pope Pius X actually wrote a papal bull to people going through seminary called, it was an oath they had to sign called an oath against modernism. And that's an interesting read, but it was kind of like foreshadowing and seeing like modernism seeking into like not just like society, but into the church. And so
But you
it
said it
was,
was an oath.
yeah,
But Jesus told us to swear no oaths. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than that is evil. And they're Paul's making them swear oaths left and right. All these oaths and things that are getting
right.
the covenants and things of the Old Testament. It's like
Yeah,
it's just
I
things
guess
you
that's the
gotta
thing.
look at.
Yeah, like I would accept the full canon of scripture as it is traditionally. So if you see like some, like for instance, right, like call no man father, and then you see like father being used plenty of times throughout the rest of the New Testament, I guess I would align with the teaching and interpretation like as found from what I found in the prevailing early Christianity, not like hidden offsets, but like some the majority. And so I guess I would just say
I
like
get
it wasn't
that.
against. Yeah,
I could get why you would want to do that because you're like, oh, this is what was, there. That was what was accepted. That's what they were teaching. But
right,
now that we have the knowledge and we have the ability to even look into I mean, you got to think. Nobody could even read and write. Nobody could discern left from right. They didn't even know. They were just
right,
accepting
yeah.
these things. And the book was chained to the pulpit. They would unalive people just for trying to read it for themselves or even
Well, that's
interpret it
what
for
that's
themselves.
one of the things that kept me away from Protestantism was it didn't make sense how Bible alone could even be a thing when the majority of Christian history Bibles weren't readily available like they are nowadays, and then people, even if
Mm-hmm.
they had access to a Bible, literacy wasn't as common as it is now.
Oh,
So
right, right.
I think it's more of a modern like acceptance
Well,
or a modern like denial of the past to say like the Bible alone is the only way because it just would negate most of Christian history just because that wasn't possible.
yes. Okay. So at least you see that's great. And yeah, and because you start to look at uh gosh, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'll let
I'm
somebody
sorry.
else take over. Uh, what was I going to say? Gosh, I had a good thought. I'm so sorry. I forget now what I was going to say.
It's okay. Just sift through your mental file cabinet. It'll come back. But yeah, I guess that leads me back to yeah, I would follow like I believe so I would believe that like the apostles had authority granted to them by Jesus. Like I guess I would believe in the one Jesus
Oh,
is the same Jesus, not like two different
right.
teachings.
Do you know? Have you looked into the word or looked at etymology of the word apostle? Because remember when he calls them apostles and they think he's insane for saying that? They're like, "You're crazy!" Like they think he's insane for even saying that title to them. But have
No,
you
I have
looked at
not.
what apostolos? Um, I'll
That
let
may scare
Gorman
him too
probably.
bad.
I don't
I
know.
hadn't
I'm
mentioned it because
interested. Yeah,
I might
let
scare
me
him.
know. Let me know. What is apostle a bad word? I think you both muted.
Oh, Stolus was the prince of hell in the Keys of Solomon, which they took out of the Old Testament, and Apo means from the prince of hell. That's why everybody was saying they thought he was insane when he named him that. And the word is not used that many times when you actually get to looking at the text. It's like most of the time they're called disciples, his followers.
So, do you
But
believe Jesus called them apostles, or do you think that somebody distorted that when they wrote that?
I think they changed the meaning of the word
So,
over
you think
time.
Jesus did call them apostles?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he.
because they thought he was insane when he said
Okay.
that.
Because I always
So,
wondered about that text. I'd be reading along, and it's like, and it says that he appointed or called them apostles, and then all of a sudden it says, and everybody thought he was insane. And I said, why did they think he was insane just because he named them apostles? I didn't know till I started really digging into that word. I was like, ooh, it's like not good.
so
That's
why do you think Jesus would use such a bad term for the people he's granting authority to lead his
Well,
church?
look what they did. Peter denied him with oaths and curses in his mouth. He called Peter Satan also. He said, haven't I chose you 12, yet one of you is the devil? I mean, there's something wrong there, you know? Everybody thinks it's all rosy and good, but they were all of them were always wanting to know who was going to be first, who's going to have the place of honor.
So,
Um,
so would that lead to so you do you believe Jesus called them apostles as a pejorative?
I think that he was saying that they are the ones that betray him.
The apostle? Oh, okay, that's new
Yeah.
to me. Yeah, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to internalize that one.
Yeah, I think they were because
And I'm sorry, I know some of these things can sound very offensive to somebody that's a Catholic or a Christian. So I can't even believe how you're listening and responding now. So it's
Oh no,
that.
I when I was an atheist, I said way worse stuff. It wasn't based on theology though. It was just more of a vitriol. So
Yeah, I
like
get it. I get it. No, I felt the same way. I was in the exact same mindset. And I believed a lot more in like sciences and things to just so well this can be true, so that could be true. But then you start to see now for somebody to be able to even say what we're saying and go through this research in the 70s or 80s, even the 90s, you would have to be very wealthy and be able to fly all over and look at these things for yourself. I mean, you would have to have so much money to be able to even look at these things and say what we're even saying. But now it's a little different because it's all accessible to the common person.
right. Anyone
For
can have a
somebody to
$20
study.
cell phone and have access to everything.
Yeah, it's a wild time we're living in.
Yeah. It's do you feel that Christianity's like become even more divided in the last decade simply because of the advances of technology?
Oh,
Because I
absolutely.
like music, right? I hear a lot of people that like they go, "Oh, music isn't as good as it used to be because now you can just get an iPad and get on the radio, And so like I wonder if that same argument
Right.
follows with
I think a
Christian
lot of
faith.
people are begun doing their church stuff online and not doing it even going to a church, like physically getting up and going, you
Mm,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Of course, all the COVID mess kind of helped that along too. That kind of,
So what do
but
you
Yeah.
think about like Jesus praying for unity in the garden, right? And like asking for unity because through unity the world will know you sent me. And now you see all this division, which I mean, at least when I was an atheist, it helped keep me away from the faith simply because I was like, you guys can't even agree with each other and you're all hypocrites. And I grew this hatred.
Right. Oh, I
So I'm
know.
wondering
I know.
like,
Me too.
so
Me
I'm wondering
too.
like where again, I think it's just, my foundation, I think is rooted solely in like the promise of Christ that his church wouldn't be prevailed. And I think the most convincing thing for me, like from my reason, was just historically seeing like you have the apostles, you have the patristics, you have scholasticism, and then you have like the modern day, and then all that lineage is through like the papacy, like all the succession of the bishops of Rome, and that
yeah,
to me just made the most sense. So I would have to like to consider your guys' side. I would have to, I guess, see that same like somehow a connection from the beginning, because otherwise, to me, if it came along later and didn't have like a strong lineage back to the beginning, then there would have to be a claim that the church was prevailed in order to break away from it. And that was one of the main reasons why I didn't go into Protestantism, because to do so, I believe, felt like calling Jesus a failure or a liar with that promise of the church not being prevailed. So like how I'm trying to reconcile that with the
Uh,
beliefs that you're sharing with me, and I can't. But I guess maybe I haven't looked at it
No,
long enough.
it's okay.
well,
You're
it
you're
takes a lot of time to see this. It's not like something you can just like snap and tell somebody, and this is just this is the first attempt we've done at going live and trying to talk to people. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
yeah.
we've been at
We've
it
only
about a
been doing
week,
this.
so
Oh,
Yeah.
a
wow.
week or
Okay.
two, a little over a week.
Here I
So
am. Yeah, that's cool.
so you're a good one to talk to because you don't get angry. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That
it's I
helps.
think it's I think it's scandalous really to start, getting uncharitable and yelling and stuff. It's like I believe we're all going through a process, right? I have the faith I have. I think it's accurate, but like if you don't, then let's talk about it. Maybe that's like more of my reasoning and my background as opposed to just being bred inside of
Right.
my belief system.
Do
well,
you know what the title Christ means, or what it would entail if somebody were to call him that title?
I mean, from my background, it'd be anointed one, right? But maybe
Right.
it's yeah.
Jewish prophesied Messiah. Right. Right. Which
But after hearing about the apostles, I don't know. Do you have a different do you have a different way of interpreting it?
well, um to call him the Christ is, I think that's why he's saying so many times, like he's rebuking them, and a rebuke isn't something small. It's not something that's just to be taken lightly. He's rebuking them and commanding them to never tell anyone this. And now I know that the church will say, oh, well, he's just telling them that they got to lie basically until the appointed time, but never anywhere does he actually ever admit it. If you're really looking at all the text, and so. And the text doesn't read that way. It's not telling us that. It's like, where is it saying that he's telling them to lie about this until it's a certain point, and then he can say it? It's like, no, he's just telling them straight out, don't call me this, don't call me this. And he's telling us in Matthew too that that is going to be the deception, that many are going to come superimposing on top of my name and calling me the Christ. And that's pretty much exactly how it reads. But the Christ is that Jewish prophesied Messiah. It's tying it back to Yahweh, which Jesus is just so different from Yahweh that it's like, how could this be the same person if they're total polar opposites?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I know. Yeah, because I even heard that, or that's actually one of the things I used to use back in the day was I would compare it seemed like the Old Testament God was a different God from the New Testament, right? Like you had all this punishment and war and consequences, and then it's like this message of love and forgiveness, and you're just like, these can't be the same person. But
And it's nothing alike when you compare it. It's just not the same. I mean, does God really wish that none would perish, or is he full of jealousy, wrath, and anger and going to wipe out all but 1%? I mean, it's like you have to kind of step back
I
and go,
guess,
whoa,
right.
what's the
I,
difference here?
I guess I reconciled it with it just being a different covenant, and it's the same God. It's just, at least to me. And so I would say that, like, it was easier for it to dissipate the people, I would assume, just because it wasn't like the same foundation that later you see like in Rome, and like having a granted alliance with the emperor. Like that's a way different thing, I would say, than like the turmoil and the ability to just dissipate as a people that you would see in like ancient Israel. And like,
Right.
so societies weren't as
But
established in the same sense. So I would say like maybe like there's a way to even navigate why there's more of a tough love kind of thing. But I would still say that, even at least from a Catholic background, there's still that sense of like, I mean, there's that term Catholic guilt, right? And I feel like that comes from,
yeah,
you know, and I would say that ties pretty closely to like maybe how you would feel with the Old Testament. But I think it's always just for our best interest, and like we're not meant to, like, heaven isn't right now, so there's going to be suffering in this life, and even some of the most craziest atrocities. I say it at the end of the day, the goal in this life isn't to make it out alive; it's to get to heaven to be with God for eternity. So if
right.
we have
That's that
this,
narrow path, right? So
right?
Jesus told us that, you are from below and I am from above. And below means something as well. He's always telling us,
It's kato in Greek, and it means, he said specifically kato cosmos, which means the underworld. He was telling us
Mm,
we are actually in hell, basically.
well, or some level of it,
Yeah,
because
some level of it.
the serpent still bites. The thorns are still on the roses. You can go on a trip and break your leg or break something in your spine and be paralyzed. This place is not Father's, and I think that's what Jesus was trying to tell us and explain to us.
I see.
That the Father's world is not like this. It's not dualistic in nature like Yahweh is, where there's this good and bad, and um
I'm actually
it,
curious. Where, based on your studies, where do you believe Jesus went after he passed?
he says that he would return to the Father.
Yeah,
So
Do
he
you
went
believe in
back to
like
his world.
do you believe he descended and went to Sheol and preached to the souls and all that, or do you have a different interpretation of it?
I think we literally are in the underworld, and I think it was us that he came to set free.
yeah,
So
it's hard to say, but yeah.
I mean, because
so
look,
he had already been crucified when he came to the apostles. Is that what you're saying? Kind of like a time bend.
No,
Well, Yahweh demands blood sacrifice. You have to remember that part. So, the
Right. So
whole
I'm
thing
wondering,
about
after the crucifixion, when he was laid in the tomb, like where was he for those like 3 days?
it says the heart of the earth. Now, nobody is able to. It's cardia, and that's literally the heart, the beat. But nobody really literally has an explanation for that, what that means. Because it doesn't mean under the dirt, it's the heart of the earth.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
So,
I would.
I'll
Like
be right back.
I would
I'll
personally
be
think.
right back.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I would personally think that like it'd be at the center of the earth, simply because the act of descending, after what I would say would be like particular judgment, would be like after we pass, right? If you descend, or like where the like demons get sent to, kind of thing, like back to hell. Like I would say it's all
yeah,
descent. So that to me would point to the center of the earth. But
interesting.
but then I've had that thought, and then you talk to people on TikTok, and some people don't believe in like the shape of the earth through like how modern science claims it to be. So that would then beg the question of where could the center be? So that's been a whole different interesting topic
Right.
to
Because
discuss, right?
if you believe in the biblical model, it would be around disc. I know what you're talking about.
Right.
With the,
Yeah. There wouldn't be a
mhm,
center of a sphere, right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
I came on here originally with a bad signal, and I've been on for about 10 minutes now, and y'all are all over the place. I forgot why I jumped on.
Hey, I'm sorry. We've been
Man.
in
All
this
right.
so
It's
thick.
all
I'm
right.
sorry. I didn't mean to ignore you.
No. I had a bad signal. I even put it on there, I have a bad signal. I'll come on in a minute. But man, y'all been all over the place. I forgot why I jumped on now. Is this atheist?
We're writing
No,
the
Oh
next.
no,
We're
we are
writing the
not
next
no.
Star
atheists
Wars
at all.
script.
We are believers in Jesus.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I was just listening.
I know it sounds confusing. I know it's a lot. I know it sounds pretty crazy. So it's okay. We get that a lot.
Well, I remember y'all were talking about the church a while ago, and y'all said something. I'm a worship pastor, and I was trying to remember what y'all were saying. Dang it.
It's okay. Try to remember. Try to remember. We'll address it.
Well, y'all were saying something about the church. Y'all were saying the church did something.
Church has done a lot of things.
Oh, trust me too. The church has done a lot to me also.
Well, what is your stance, and what's your background, or where are you at right now, so we can try to meet you where you're at?
Without all the stuff in the middle, as far as church and stuff, I grew up Lutheran as a kid.
Okay.
Messed with by a Lutheran church camp counselor, so it kind of ruined it for me after that.
Yeah, it happens to a lot of people. It's very unfortunate. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. No, that's just kind of part of me. It's all good. That makes me who I am. After that, didn't get back into church till I was way older, when my kid got tumors in his head, and I started getting involved. Then I started liking the music. Worship pastor there got a hold of me, and now I've gone through school and all that to be a worship pastor. I used to be an alcoholic and addict and all that fun stuff, dealer. But
It's okay.
now
A lot of us here come from those backgrounds.
totally turned around, which is real great, by the grace of God.
That's wonderful.
I am in a struggle right now. It's really just a church struggle.
What's your struggles with the church?
I have been leading the traditional service for 2 years now, after there was a demand for a traditional service, or they were leaving because they didn't like the contemporary bright screens, everything, the darkness when they had to get up.
Sure.
All the elders had to stay, all of that, all the things, I guess you could say. Anyways, now I'm kind of doing this traditional service, I'm kind of at a stalemate as far as moving on in my career, which I have started late anyways. I ain't getting no younger, you know.
How old are you now?
45.
Mm.
Of course, the traditional side is where I need to, you know, really focus as far as career-wise, because that's the demand, you know, pro presenter, the computer stuff and all that. I need to have all that down when I go applying, you know, at different churches. So anyways, I don't want to quit what I'm doing, okay, at all, really. I don't. I love the relationships, the people, the camaraderie, the stuff I learned from these elders, whenever I just fellowship with them every week, you know, walk through stuff with them. It's real cool, you know, which I never would have done if I wouldn't have taken over leading, if I wouldn't have taken this over leading with the traditional.
Right. I assume you have a deep care for people. You want to talk with people. That's what's inside
and
of
for
you.
memorial for the church, you know, I have a love for the church. It's the family, you know, and so I don't want to disappoint nobody. And I know just
No, it's okay.
It's a community of people, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, you're selling out on us." Hopefully not, you know. But the problem is like, for the past couple of years doing this service, I was told anything combined, you can go and get those reps in. If we ever have combined where everybody's having a service together, right? Well, I've been looked over, but now I'm like having to make this decision. Quit doing traditional and only focus on that. You know, but I think I'm going to make people mad, too. You know, does that make sense?
Oh,
So I'm just trying, it's a struggle. It sounds like oh my God, people are struggling with so much more. I'm struggling with so much more in life than that, but in me, you know, mentally, it's my church problem right now, and I'm just trying to.
We've all had church problems. Okay. Do you want to respond to him going on that?
Yeah, I think it's a strong testimony that he has belief. You know, it's like that's a lot to go through. You can tell Jesus is with you. I can tell that.
Yeah, praise God. I really find it in this. I think I really enjoy dealing with different kinds of people. I'm a people watcher, you know, and I'm a people reader. And whenever I talk to different people, I like to get on their level and ask them about themselves. And, you know,
Right.
So I know where they're coming from whenever they have like complaints or, you know, these opinions on stuff versus just shutting down when I don't like what they have to say. I like to figure them out, you know, and get on their level and help them handle problems. It's just something I enjoy doing. So I'm just having fun with it, man. Praise God.
Have you? I want to try to bring it back to Yahweh and the Father again, because it seems like both people on the panel, if you can't see that, it's going to be real hard to understand what we're going more in depth in. So, do you've read the Old Testament a lot, or not really, or?
Yes, I have. I've read the Bible a lot, you know, a bunch of times, and I'm still. I comprehend way slower. Wreckage of the Past. I've pickled my brain, so I comprehend stuff a little different than most. I have to hear it over and over and over. So yes,
right. Me too.
I have listened to the Old Testament tons, and people talk about it. I can get real involved in the conversations, you know, but quoting scripture is probably one of my hurdles that I'm going to have have to get eventually. But it's not.
That's all right.
You know,
we're just trying to talk about nature of character and things. It doesn't matter how much where your knowledge is at is not important. We're really more focused on what Jesus is saying and that character and what he was saying. That's our final authority. Jesus is our final authority of what we want to believe and think and live our lives by.
Yeah, Totally agree. Definitely.
Okay,
That's
okay.
all I live by. You know,
So
I've handed him the wheel so many times, and it works out every time.
I don't know what to say. I'm
One thing I
sorry.
might tell him to do if when he's studying is to think about the word parable, because I don't think we get the true meaning of it in the churches today. It's like when you talk about parable, it literally comes from a Latin word parabol, and it means to compare or to lay side to side. Kind of like think about parallel bars in a gym. It's like to lay it right side by side something else and compare. And I think Jesus was telling us to compare everything he said to the only text they had back then, which would have been the Old Testament text, and follow what he wanted. It's like I don't think he was teaching the same thing. And that's kind of what our little forum is about, is to try to show people that the God of the Old Testament is not really the Father that Jesus taught. And I know that goes against a lot of people's churches and stuff, but I think when you start comparing, you can see it like it's like you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you it's not so. And Yahweh in the Old Testament tells people to go after their enemies, and then Jesus says, love your enemies. Um, like the serpent, it's like, what father would give you a serpent when you ask for a fish? Well, if you go back and read the Old Testament, when Moses and them were in the wilderness, when they asked for fish, Yahweh sent fiery serpents and it bit them and it killed a lot of them. It's like I think he was giving us comparisons direct back and forth, back and forth. You know.
Would you say you align with like Marcionite theology?
Now, somebody asked me that, I guess, a couple of years ago, and I had never read any of Marcion's stuff. So what I did
No,
was,
because Marcion he really adored Paul and whatnot, so
and
we wouldn't agree with
I'm
them.
not
He
crazy
just
about
really wanted
Paul's
to detach
writings.
from like the Judaic or the Judaic connection to Christianity, right? And I guess you're not really like trying to go that far.
No, because Marcion is going to take you into more Gnostic nonsense, and we're not about that. We're not Gnostics, but we understand that they did see differences, so we'll say that. But we're just trying to focus on the words of Jesus, foremost.
Yeah, I would say probably if you asked me what my church was, it's following the words of Jesus as best I can, and actually analyzing the old text to see if what we have matches what he said. You know.
Is there a physical church that you go to?
No, no, that's
No,
just my personal belief. You know.
I see. Because I'm wondering, like, let's say there were early Christians that had believed this. Because again, I'm always trying to settle like where my foundational roots are, and so I'm wondering if,
I think it was called the
like,
Way.
where would they
I think
commune? I
that's
guess, like, how would they come to know these truths and stay together and united in this faith?
I think that to begin with, that a lot of it was oral, and they started writing it down, and then making the gospels. Um,
Right, but you're discovering it for yourself, right? You're not actually like reading it from something that's been passed down traditionally.
right. I'm trying to take the oldest text and look at it and see what it really said, because you can tell from one Bible to the next. I mean, you can pick up like your Dewey Ryan, and then go pick up a Message Bible today. They don't even read the same. It's like,
100%. Yeah, I
yeah,
am not a fan of modern translations or modern textual criticism because I think a lot of the
yeah.
scholars, they're not even Christian to begin with, and they're constantly doubting. Like for instance, I
Oh
don't know, like
yeah.
what, like I don't like I reject the idea that like the synoptic gospels were written after the destruction of the temple. I believe they were written beforehand. I
We
don't
we
believe
think
in
we think
I don't
John
believe
was the
in
first book
Q.
written.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe in the
Which would
Q
they?
theory with like, they
We don't
copied
either.
off of Mark and like or that the gospels were anonymous. Like I reject all of that. And all of that comes from modern like scholar textual criticism. And it's just
Yeah,
I
Well,
we
like
see
they
the
try
know
to
that.
deny that Peter was the first pope. You can't deny that if you read Peter, because it says it was an election. And when you look at the Greek, it's the same type election they do for the Pope today,
Right,
with
it's
the smoke and all.
identical.
Yeah, it's with the smoke and all. If you come back, I'll have to pull that slide and see if I can find it and show it to you, because it's actually in there that they elected him.
So if you're discovering this for yourself and it's not being passed down through any sort of faith tradition, why would it be hidden for so long? I guess would be my next train of thought. Like, why is it being revealed through you now, some 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years after, I guess, the ascension of
We
Christ?
are in the age of the Aquarius, which means knowledge and wisdom will be poured out on us. And I hate to like bring that up, but a lot
Plus,
of information is being
Right. I'm just
provided
wondering,
to
like,
us.
why would Jesus come 2,024 years ago if we follow like 80, right? Like the timeline. And then go through the crucifixion, resurrect, start a faith, ascend into heaven, and then just let everything go completely haywire with like all false teachings, bad doctrine. And then now in September of 24, the last 10 years, I would say, let's say in 2014,
Right.
you would
We
he
start
get
to,
it.
told
We
you
he
get
told
it.
see,
us it
like,
would
that would be
happen.
my question.
The parable of the
Yeah.
sower. He said that the word of God is given, and immediately the devil comes and destroys it.
Hmm.
He told us it was going to happen. He talked a lot
That's
about
right.
deception.
Yeah.
He
Right,
said
but
that
that wouldn't
we
that mean
would be
that every
following the
Christian
wrong
had it
one.
wrong since Christ ascended
I
into
mean, yeah,
heaven?
it's
Would
unfortunate to think about it like that. I mean, yeah, it's like, gosh, have we been lied to for 2,000 years? And is all this just
Why would God
not,
do that? I guess would be my question.
well, the God of
Why
this
come and do
world
all this
is
stuff
not
and
who
then
people think that he is. The God of this world is Yahweh, and he's always out to deceive and lie and do everything that Jesus said he was going to do.
You know where he says many will go to destruction and few find the way?
yeah,
I think that's why. It's like, okay, destruction. Think about that word. It's like when you go look at the word, the tetragrammaton for the Old Testament God, Yahweh, it is Yod He Vah He, and it's like Hava. If you go look at your Strong's interlineary, Hava means to ruin or destroy. If you take a Hebrew word and you put a Yod in the front of it as a prefix, it means he will. So his name literally means he will destroy as a verb, and then as a noun, it means destruction. And see, people in the first century would have known that. When he said that, their mind would have clicked to it immediately. But it's like nowadays, we've been handed a Strong's, and when you go look at the word for Yahweh in Strong's, and it'll say this, the God of Israel. It doesn't say what the root word is, and Hebrew is a root word language.
right.
It's just like in Revelation when you read Abaddon. I bet you don't think about being in Italy, and they actually called the priest Abaddons in times past. Abba, Father, Don. That was a term used for the Catholic priest. I don't want to scare you, but if you
No,
read,
no, I'm listening.
yeah, if you read Revelation in Greek, it would scare you to know that you're sitting in the Catholic Church right now.
Mm.
Yeah, unfortunately. But see, that was my thing. It's like I kept thinking, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with this picture. What is going on? And the more I read the Bible, it's like, especially when I went to the Old Testament, I was like, this is not the Father that Jesus teaches. What is wrong with this text? Because you've got everything in there from human sacrifices in Judges 11. You've got abortions in Numbers 5. You've got Yahweh asking them to go in and unalive a whole nation rip out the babies out of the wombs and take the women and make them like concubines. It's like give them a month, shave their head, and after a month's time, then you can know her in terms of like intimately, and instantly becomes your wife. Can you imagine? I mean,
So in your
there's
theology, the father's the good one, right?
yes, uh-huh.
Okay. So do you
There's only
believe
good in him.
the father sends anyone to hell then after this life, or do you not believe in hell?
I don't think that Father sends anybody to the darkness or to hell, or to be um because to me hell would be separation from Father. It would be
Right.
not being able to be near Father. I think people choose that route. I
Okay, I
don't
would agree
think
with
it's a
that. Yeah.
I don't think it's something that um he wants for anybody, but they decide they want it. They want to be separated, you
Do
know.
you do you believe after, like, let's say passing from this life and then into the next, is the will locked into the state that you passed in, or do you think that there's like a moment of, because I guess, right, if let's say you pass and you're in the presence of Almighty God, right? Like there's no way if
Right.
you still had like an ability to choose that you would reject, right?
I think
Uh,
that the second that you draw your last breath, you're with him. You're right there with Jesus, I think.
Even if you rejected him in this life?
Um, maybe not. Maybe not if you reject. If you reject him, I think you're messing up there.
I see. Yeah.
And I wonder if we don't come back here until we learn to accept, because, he said he almost spoke of like reincarnation when he said Elijah's already come. You know, it's like what? When you read that, it's like, does he believe in reincarnation? It's like, but
Well,
I
and
think
then
that
we have a
Do you
lot
have
of
any?
near-death experiences that we've listened to, and I
Yeah,
like
those
to
are those
listen
are
to a
pretty
lot of it.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're always talking about Jesus. They're talking about this overwhelming peace and love that they experience, and then they get pulled back. Um,
I had an
There's some though that
encounter.
have some pretty terrifying experiences too.
that's right. That's right. So people don't always have the same experience. I was just talking about the ones that are on more of that path, but
Right. Okay.
where
Yeah.
they're but they'll even say, "Oh no, I believed in Jesus. I believe this and that. I wanted to live this way." So it's not, because sometimes I think people think that we're saying, "Oh, well, if you don't think exactly like us, it's just not right." And we're not saying that, because we know that there's tons of people in the churches that they clearly emulate and walk the path that Jesus was teaching. So,
Right.
um, it's even like my own mother. She definitely does that. She tries to help people. She tries to do these things or whatever. But if I try to talk to her about, if she were to join this live, she would be going absolutely ballistic, which I appreciate you for not doing that. Um,
There's no fruit in that, I don't
but,
think.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, we
True.
agree.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. And if it doesn't produce good fruit, then it's not worthy of doing it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you. I do have to step down. I do appreciate your time, and I'm sure I'll be back. It was a very
Oh,
interesting
well, thank
I
you.
hope
conversation.
you do come back.
Yeah,
I
I
really
enjoyed talking
appreciated
to you.
talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I followed you both, so I'll be notified when you're back live.
Okay,
Welcome to
great.
TikTok.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, we'll
it's a
follow
it's
you
a zoo, isn't
back.
it? It's a zoo. It's wild.
All right. God bless everyone.
You too.
Yeah, have a good night. Well, that was pretty constructive. I mean, gosh, to try to talk to somebody like that and that background and what they believe. I mean, to even try to for him to even try to want to hear what we were saying, that was immense. that was that was a lot.
Yeah, that was. But
Uh-huh.
he did really well. And he had good questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, both of them did.
I don't know. Let's see. Is there anybody else in here?
Thank you for following the way. Appreciate that. We try to be because that's the way Jesus would want us to be.
Is this working?
Oh, hello,
Hey.
Nick. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Nick. That's
Not
my
too bad,
son.
hey?
Oh,
So,
Oh,
from the
awesome.
earlier conversation, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. Hello. So the way my brain works is I think a lot of the sciencey side of things, but I'm ADHD, so my brain, I can't really make it make sense to other people unless they know what I'm talking about.
right.
Do you know what a toroidal plane is?
Yes.
Thank
Right,
goodness.
so you've
I
got-
don't. Thank you, Nate.
And I'm going to make this really quick so you guys can get back on task. So, in our reality, we might perceive the Earth as a globe or whatever. But
The
doesn't mean
toroidal
that
plane
that's
really
doesn't
only
mean that,
only makes sense though, really on a level motionless Earth. But I don't want to get too
correct.
deep
That's
into
what I
that.
mean. But what I was going
Okay.
to say, and I don't want to get into it either, is that we may perceive it that way, but it doesn't mean the Father sees it that way. It doesn't mean that's how
Right,
He's designed it.
Yeah, because it's dualistic in nature. It's been corrupted.
Correct. But it's also separated permanently.
Yes, this realm is. You see it in everyday
And it's got
experience.
layers to a magnetic field, right? So there's layers, which could be the levels
Right.
of heaven, or the heavens, plural.
Right.
And then outside of that, the Father would exist. But as for the heart of the earth, the belief, this is where I'm going back to that whole heart of the earth thing that Calvinov mentioned.
Right.
There's the black sun, which is supposed to be under our feet, which if you look at the
Right.
negative pole
Right.
of a toroidal field is a black or a negative ball of energy, basically.
Yeah,
and then
I know.
there's
I
the
know what
white
you're talking
energy at
about.
the top.
Right.
So the white energy could be our sun, and then we could have the black sun below our feet, and that's hell. Like you're tormented for all of eternity there. This is
Right.
a layer or a level of hell, and then the further you go up,
Okay.
That's how my brain works.
No, I get it. Okay.
So I can follow along with everything you guys are saying because I talked about it with Lynn, my mom,
Okay.
and I fully believe it. So I
Yeah,
just
it
want to
is
say
a
I'm-
construct of which we live in. I think so.
yeah.
But
No, I threw a
no, it's okay. I just
comment out
No.
there, so.
no. I've looked into that. I've studied. So it is okay. So is there a question that comes after that? Is something
I just wanted to
deeper
know
than
what
that?
your guys' opinion on that whole thing is. Like, is that
Think it exists.
even a
Think that it-
possibility, or
Oh no, yeah, I think it is absolutely the construct in which we live in, but that is a dualistic nature. It's Yahweh's prison system in which we live in.
Oh, for sure, and that's
It's not
one of the things I
something
believe
to
our
be
souls
worshipped,
are trapped
but-
in unless we're able to elevate to a higher level of thinking or more father-like mindset.
Okay, all right. It sounds like you're getting it then.
Yeah, that
so-
makes sense.
Yeah, because Father's kingdom and where he's trying to lead us to, it's not like this. It's not.
It's from a place of purity and love. There's no
Right. It's not this how the Masonic temples and everything with the checkerboards. No, it's all black and white, and we have both the good and the bad, and all that they want to worship, and they want to be androgynous, and they want to do all this and that, whatever. That's not what Jesus is really telling us to do. You go into Jewish Kabbalism, it's going to support a lot of these things of the dualistic nature in which we live in. because it's going to tie you back to Yahweh, because he is dualistic. And that is the God of this world. And I don't know, I can't answer all the questions about why this place is corrupted, why it is the way that it is. Things are the way that they are, but we have a new guest.
Well, like I say, I didn't want to interrupt for too long.
Oh no,
Oh no, you're
I'd
not
love to continue
interrupting. That
hearing more.
was very timely. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Hello, Jay.
And I appreciate what you guys are doing here. So,
Oh, thanks, Nick.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I cut in?